Hello, this is Dr. Llewellyn Eisen, and today we're going to talk about something known as the sick role. And this is a role that a person takes on where they intentionally cultivate or even cause or allow to cause an illness or sickness within themselves. Now, I know it seems that reading the lesson up to this point, it doesn't seem like we've been talking about monastic or ascetic figures. We've actually been talking about the legalization of Christianity, or at least you've been reading about that. But the legalization and then eventual promotion of Christianity is going to be part of what will prompt notions about the body and care for the body that will culminate in something known as the sick role, or at least will support its existence. So I want to talk just a little bit about the legalization of Christianity and the importance of that event as a way of getting into the topic of organized medical care within Christianity. So you've been introduced to this fellow here, Constantine, Emperor Constantine, who in 313, along with his co-emperor, wrote in the Edict of Milan that no one whatsoever should be denied the opportunity to give his heart to the observance of the Christian religion. I forgot to remove the masculine pronoun there, so let's reread that no one whatsoever should be denied the opportunity to give one's heart to the observance of the Christian religion. So this figure here, this statue of Constantine, is actually in England. He has British roots, and even though it is not at all contemporary to the time period of Constantine, he lived during the 4th century, and this is a modern statue. Nevertheless, to use academic language, it's just a badass posture. You know, he just looks so sure of himself, just so cocky, that I always really like it. I like to use it. I just think there's a lot of attitude in that posture, and I kind of like that. Okay, so we know that prior to Constantine, as the emperor of the Roman Empire, we know that Christianity had emerged as Ferngren writes, as a religion of healing. And we also know that healing took several forms. Many of them were along the lines of folk medicine, so they were very simple homeopathic types of medical procedures or medical remedies. We know that exorcism is a form of healthcare that we've seen in some of the texts that we've been reading, specifically in the Gospel of Mark. We've encountered incubation as a form of medical care, so the placing of an individual in a site of silence, quiet, in order for them to rest and sleep, and then the divine being may choose or choose not to visit them during their sleep, during their period of incubation. We saw this at the in the Asclepian text and in the Asclepian site. But then also, as Christianity develops, it begins to construct various forms of hospitality or hostels for not just pilgrims, not just people who are coming to sites like in Jerusalem, but also for people who are flocking to the cities for work, and so therefore find themselves in need. And part of the task of Christians, because of the theology of the Imago Dei, the image of God, part of the task of Christians is to care for those who bear in their physical being the image of God. In time, poorhouses or xenodochia are going to be constructed, and these are going to be ways that Christian groups will be able to distribute food, and they'll be able to distribute money and clothing to people who need those things. There is a sermon written by Basil the Great, the brother of Gregory of Nyssa, whose text you read yesterday, and Basil is chastising members of the congregation who have stolen some of the clothing out of the storehouse, and he says that they have committed a double crime, because not only have they taken the garments, but they have also robbed someone who has nothing. So poorhouses exist at this time as a way of being a place of respite and care for those who need some of the basic human needs, and not necessarily medical care, but one could argue that fresh water or a kind attitude or a place to rest could be considered. I would call that preventative medicine personally. And then Christians also, prior to Constantine, are noted for the relief that they offer both during and after certain natural disasters that happen in these early centuries of the Common Era. Events such as some earthquakes, there are some epidemics of illness or plague, and then of course, when you have natural disasters, you often have famines that follow, or diseases, when you have like a disruption in clean water or the destruction of crops or things like that in the wake of natural disasters. And Rodney Stark, who's a sociologist, writes that the relief that's offered by Christian communities is going to be one of the key pieces that is going to contribute to the success of Christianity as a religion, and it's going to make the religion attractive to people who might not otherwise care or even notice. So Emperor Constantine then, so who cares? So you have this imperial figure who emerges in the 4th century as a significant leader, both militarily and politically, and he favors Christianity and in time promotes it. And one of the first things he does is he closed the Asclepion. And by closing the Asclepion, he closes a site dedicated to, of course, as we know, Asclepius and Hygeia and Asclepius's other children, where people can go and get medical care. And they flock to this site, and they flock not only to the Asclepion on Kos, but there are multiple Asclepions. So if you're going to close a significant site of healing and healthcare, you're going to have to open others, aren't you? Well, you don't have to, I suppose, but nevertheless, what he does is he provides Christianity with the money that had funded places of care that were not Christian, and he provides that money to bishops, to leaders, part of that threefold level of organization, and they in turn founded hospitals and xenodochia in cities such as Constantinople, Jerusalem, and other major cities in the Roman Empire. And below here is an image of one of the hospitals. And you can see this is a pretty massive structure, and it's only one hallway. And so these are cities, these major cities are sites of movement, sites of travel, sites of development, and sites of activity. And so when you have these developing cities, you need to be able to provide care for people. And so he places this particular activity in the hands of this one religious group. So this is kind of significant that from this point on, religious sites of healing and physical welfare are Christian and they are state funded. Now, I suppose one could argue that they were state funded before, but now they're essentially under the care of one particular religion. And notice I said under the care, not under the control. Because of course, there are going to be abuses in any system, but that's not where we are yet. We're not at that point yet. So Constantine as a figure matters for Christian history and for the history of medicine and religion, because his political endorsement of Christianity provided money for Christians to build. Okay, and not just hospitals and not just hostels and not just poorhouses, but money to build also basilica or churches. And even in those churches, healthcare took place, even in churches themselves, in the aisles, in the naves, in the porches. These were sites where people with real physical need would go and in hope to receive care. Constantine also matters because these buildings provided for the suffering poor, the hungry, the sick, the dislocated, and the displaced persons. We don't want to forget that there is historically on the way, what's coming is a great deal of dislocation due to movement into the western part of the Roman Empire of various Germanic tribes. The Vandals, the Goths, the Visigoths, the Huns, the Lombards, Merovingians in time, Carolingians. All of these groups are going to move into the western part of the Roman Empire, and that's going to cause a great deal of disruption. And so sites of care are important. And then why would Christians have to care for the suffering poor, the hungry, and the sick, and the dislocated, and the displaced? Because all of these individuals are interpreted as the Imago Dei. All of these individuals are in the image of God because they bear the human form. And if one considers that Christian theological claim, which is a Jewish theological claim, that humans are made in the image of God, that means there's something of the image of God in all people. Not that all people look like God, that's not what that means. But what that means is that one should always honor and respect the possibility and the potential of the divine in the person who stands before you. So Constantine also matters because even as Constantine provided and offered benefits to Christianity as a whole, and these benefits that Constantine offered were accepted, nevertheless, there were some who said, we're not really interested in what it is that the imperial government has to provide, and that they argued that Christianity should not ever be dependent on the government to provide an easier life for them. You see, prior to Constantine's considerable donations, all of the services, including the hostels and the poorhouses and the alms, all of these things were given either by bishops, or bishops would plead with wealthy Christians to donate their estates and donate endowments for the poorhouses. And some even managed to convince imperial figures to assign tax revenues to cover the expenses. But for the most part, they were taken care of within the religion itself. And so to have now an imperial figure saying, I'm going to give you money for these things, and your life is going to be easier as a result of it, you don't have the possibility of suffering and dying for your faith, this was seen as somewhat problematic.